Back 365 Sports, Paul Catalina, David Smoke, and Craig Smoke. John McClain of the Houston Chronicle. John, is Houston fans' only solace that at least it's worse than Dallas right now?
HoustonTexans.com, but that's okay.
No, sorry.
The Cowboys, of course, you guys know, have lost 3 in a row. Texans have lost 3 of 4. They can't score in the second half. They were beating the Lions 23-7, and they have not scored a touchdown in the second half in the last 4 games and 5 of the last 6. Their worst quarter is the third. The Cowboys' worst quarter is the third. And I tell you what, I'm worried about is one of these teams going to get the moonlight in their eyes.
Yeah, right. We're talking about that, John. How legit is I guess when your best wide receiver says, like, hey, it's a problem, that's probably worth listening. I mean, what do you just make of this entire curtain circus and Jerry and just where Dallas is at the moment?
Well, have we ever heard this talked about before? I don't think so.
The sunlight has been brought up in Dallas a few times, but I don't know if it's ever really traveled outside those boundaries.
Yeah, Kellen Moore said today when he was asked about it, he said, as an offensive coordinator and play caller, you have to adjust knowing when the sun is going to be shining where. And I don't remember them ever having a big issue when Moore was there. You know, he was under a lot of criticism a lot because of the offense or the way they were losing, but it wasn't like the sun got in my eyes. And it seems like it's just kind of a natural thing, so Cowboy-like this season, which has just been a disaster. But now, of course, my goodness, it's going to be, everybody's going to be talking about it next time they're home, not this one, because it gets dark so early. And I thought it was so funny when Mike McCarthy at the Star went for his news conference on Monday and the sun was shining in and they had the screen up to keep it from getting on him. And he just stood there laughing because he knew about the irony of that whole situation.
Only the Cowboys, though, could have – I know that there's some quirks in other places, but this becomes such a big deal because it's Dallas, right?
Absolutely, David. Because it's the Cowboys, it's magnified. They're the most popular team in the league, whether they win, lose, or draw. And there's jokes about placing them out of Thanksgiving because they're so bad. But on the other hand, they will have the biggest ratings no matter who else plays on Thanksgiving. And a lot of people like to see the Cowboys suffer. It's not just that they like them. A lot of them hate them, and they want to see them get kicked when they're down. If they were to come back with Cooper Rush, and I do believe Trey Lance is destined to start soon, and beat the Texans, it would be panic city here. Texans have lost 2 games to NFC North teams at Lambeau Field and against the Lions on field goals with no time left. And it's weird because they play poorly, and yet they play bad, just poor enough to lose like that. And C.J. Stroud, who took all the blame for the loss, and it wasn't his fault, of course, but he pointed out, he said, man, we got to also look at the fact we played one of the best teams in the league down to the wire and take that when we're preparing for the next one. And the problem with the Texans, their offensive line is awful. They are terrible up the middle on pass protection. They've been good on run blocking. They make 2 changes. Pass protection improves, and the run blocking is awful. And it's amazing because they invested 2 ones in the left tackle, Laramie Tunsil. Kenyon Green, the left guard, out for the season was a 1 for an A&M. The center was a 2 last year. Right guard, Shaq Mason, expensive free agent. Right tackle, Titus Howard was a number 1 pick. They have the second most guaranteed money for an offensive line to Carolina, and they ain't getting their bang for the buck, I can tell you.
John, off-season, obviously they're going to focus on offensive line and all that, but is this Bobby Slowick's fault that the offensive line has regressed? Obviously they have injuries too. Or is this just the victim of circumstance about the players and Bobby Slowick is fine?
Very interesting question, Paul. Last year they had started 12 offensive linemen, more than 18 in the league because of injuries. And they didn't have these pass protection issues. They played the Steelers, beat them by 24 points. Steelers had no sacks. T.J. Watt touched Stroud one time, and they did it with three guys who are not in the league. One's backup somewhere else, and one's a starter here. And it's like teams started doing things 3 games ago, running stunts in the middle, and they couldn't pick them up. And they commit penalties at the wrong time. They have the same coach as last year. His name is Chris Strasser, and I guarantee you he'll be the first coach that's fired. If there was a play in the second half where Tank Dell was wide open in the end zone, and C.J. Stroud had to slide to avoid a rush, he threw a pass to him. He didn't get to it quick enough because of the rush. He didn't put enough juice on it, and he gave a cornerback, Carlton Davis, just enough time to run over and intercept. Now, if he had thrown it a split second sooner, Texans would have won that game. They'd be the toast of the AFC now, beating the Lions. But the Lions are 8-1 for the first time since I was 3 years old in Waco.
Really? Is that like with
1954.
Bobby Lane and all those guys?
They won 2 championships under Buddy Parker, and that was last time they were 8-1 was 1954. Another thing's interesting about that Lions game, and it shows them, bodes well for them when they're in tough games or in the playoffs. Besides, they're the first team to throw 5 interceptions and trail by at least 16 points to win since 1970. And Jared Goff came to Houston with 4 interceptions, left with 9. Texans couldn't capitalize except on a field goal and a touchdown. Detroit pulled that out with a kicker, Jake Bates, who was working here for Acme Bricks when the Michigan Panthers called him, and he went there for a season. Then the Lions signed him. So he's from Tomball, as you know, a Houston suburb. And the holder, the punter, was from Rice, and their left tackle had to play as an emergency for their best lineman, Taylor Decker. He was with the Texans, and he was selling food here when the Lions called him 2 years ago.
John, I know it's kind of become a hot topic to talk about, but what are your thoughts, or how impressed are you by Baker Mayfield's career renaissance that seems to be ongoing in Tampa Bay?
People got a lot of respect for him. The fact he lost Mike Evans and Chris Godwin has been extra impressive. Now they've got a losing record, but he went on that 1-year deal, his 4th team, and he got a big contract after they won the division and beat the Eagles. And now you're looking around, will Sam Darnold be that guy? Will he go somewhere and get a big contract? Minnesota can't give him a big contract because they got J.J. McCarthy, their first-round pick this year, coming off knee surgery, ready to play next year. So you can't give Darnold a 5-year deal for big money. So any team needing a quarterback, if Darnold keeps it up, he's got a chance to get a Mayfield-type quarterback contract.
John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist, with us on 365 Sports. John, what was your reaction on Monday at Gonzaga with Baylor Basketball? We had you on the next day, but they did bounce back with the win against Arkansas and Calipari on Saturday evening.
Yeah, I was so happy about that. I think isn't that 3 in a row they've beaten Calipari. Calipari had a great quote afterward that he talked to Mark Pugh, the Gonzaga coach, about that game, and he's lamenting, now we got a plan. Because he knew Scott Drew would have them bouncing back from that embarrassing loss. And we might look back on that loss and think it ultimately was good. When I watch all the new players they have, that is hard for a coaching staff because you don't know them very well. You've got to know them better. These next 2 games are, against tomato cans, but they're still going to watch these guys and learn. And I love watching the new guys. And hopefully by the time they play in the Big 12, toughest conference in NCAA, that they'll be a more cohesive unit. And but they're exciting. I'll bet you Miami is missing Omer. My goodness, that guy's a beast. It's almost like he ought to be able to get a rebound anytime. He knows how to throw his weight around.
Yes, he does. John, I have one more NFL question. If you had to put money on it, who is the Cowboys coach next year?
First person everybody's going to say is going to be Bill Belichick. Because usually when you have an offensive coach, you go to a defensive coach. Belichick and Jerry Jones are friends. I don't know if Jerry wants to go down that road. Will he look for another former head coach? Will he go for a hot coordinator, like, say, Ben Johnson at Detroit. Nobody knows, but I'm thinking, he's like older guys that he knew. And I think what a story it'd be if Bill Belichick went to Dallas to work for Jerry. People say, why would he want to work for him? Why did Bill Parcells? Parcells went there, he coached, they got along well. And I think that Bill Belichick would get along well with Jerry. Jerry doesn't make all these decisions by himself. He gets input from McCarthy. He gets input from his son, Steven. He gets input from Will McClain, the great personnel director. And the Cowboys do have talent, but their main thing, and I've told you guys this before, I think Cowboy fans should be watching Boise State, as I do now almost every week, because I love watching their running back, Ashton Jennings, who played at Lone Star High School. If they get their hands on him in next year's draft, that's going to be bad for the NFC East.
Yeah, and, Dak had the surgery, so he's done, which is probably his best. What are your thoughts about what they're doing with Cooper Rush or Trey Lance, who has – Cooper Rush had that nice run a couple of years ago, but Trey Lance is a turnover machine. Should they be giving him snaps just to give him snaps, or can you do that yet in the NFL this early? It's still early in the season.
They should be. Cooper Rush was 4-1. They're not going to the playoffs, even if he goes 4-1 over the next 5 games. Now, they won't say this, but when you're bad, you got an excuse for being bad, like your star quarterback's out. You just think about it. You're going to have better draft choices. And I think Trey Lance, you give up a 4 for him and you think he can play, put him out there. If Cooper Rush doesn't play well against the Texans, I'll guarantee you Trey Lance is going to be starting in 2 weeks, and they need to see what he can do. I saw him in Santa Clara his rookie year. Texans went out there. It was him against Davis Mills, another rookie. Lance didn't play great, but he played well enough for the 49ers to beat the Texans, and they need to give the kid a chance. And, what's he playing for? To be the backup over Rush next year? To be a player that maybe they trade after the draft if the team that needs a quarterback doesn't do well? We know he's not going to be the starter, but you've got to watch him to see, do you want him to be number 2 or do you want him to be trade back?
John, thank you, buddy. Appreciate it every Tuesday.
Thank you, guys. Took 'em Bears.
That's John McClain of the Hall of Fame columnist with us on 365 Sports.